And good evening, everyone, and welcome to EdTech Forum 2020. My name is Yernur, and I'll be your moderator today. And today we have heard about active learning, we have heard about different technologies, about digital transformations, about digital markets, but today we would like to discuss with you gig economy. So gig economy is a new term that has been recently emerging that describes a new type of economy where human capital interacts with technology and provides with very interesting solutions. It breaks down boundaries of the common world where a lot of work stuff is outplaced and outstaffed. So today I would like to welcome and present to you my co-moderator, beautiful Elmira Obry. Elmira, are you with us?
Thank you, Yernur. Yeah, of course. Warm welcome to our EdTech Forum, actually, which is the second international EdTech Forum. And I'm so keen to introduce our keynote speakers. Let's go one by one. Our first speaker is Freitag, the CEO of Claris, Silicon Valley. And of course, our dear partner and friend, Kwame Yamgnane, CEO of Qwasar, Silicon Valley, and the partner for Quant School of Advanced Technologies. Kanat Kozhahmet, he's Rector of the Open University. You, of course, know the Kanat. And Arnold, Doray, CEO of Terra AI. And Dagar Davletov, CEO of Alem School. So all the geek speakers, including us, Yernur, are here and ready for starting the session.
Thank you very much, Elmira. And when we talk about technology, one of the most recent emerging trends were mobile. And when we talk about mobile, we have to talk about Apple. And today we're very honored to have with us Freitag, who is the CEO of Claris, a subsidiary of Apple. Brad, welcome, and we're very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Yernur. It's great to be here with you and Elmira and the rest of the panel. I'm honored to participate.
So, Brad, we've heard a lot about rumors about Apple, about that you guys produce products internally and very rarely use outstaffed or outsourced personnel. So how does this COVID-19 impacted Claris and Apple? And what are your thoughts about gig economy?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been with Claris for 7 years now. We are a wholly owned Apple subsidiary, and in many wonderful ways, we have the autonomy to run independently, to make our own decisions, to operate with our own processes, and we're able to, support a variety of platforms beyond Apple, which we build to with some preference. That being said, the changes of this pandemic have really changed everything about the way we do business. We have been an in-person culture for many years, and we're now all working remotely. That happened overnight. I think what we've seen with digital transformation through this pandemic is that it really, the aspects of digital transformation accelerated by 5 years in a very short time frame due to the pandemic. So it's opened up opportunities for us to collaborate differently, to work differently. In terms of opening up to gig economy aspects and internationalization, we're already an international organization. We have a variety of offices across Europe, Asia, and the US. We've been hiring, we've continued to hire through the pandemic, but really primarily in those regions where we already have people. So what this is now changing for us is our whole perspective on the future of hiring, the future of work. We figured out that we've been incredibly productive with people working remotely, and with the improvements in bandwidth and communications technology, we do see possibilities for future hiring really anywhere in the world. It's really exciting to us what's changing and what's now possible.
Thank you, Brad. And we know that you have been building lots of partnerships around the globe. And you're trying to grow your ecosystem. So what are you guys trying to achieve at Claris, and why are you growing your partnership network, and what do you look for in the new partners?
Yeah, the most important thing for us is to source talent, right? And for us, talent comes in the form of aptitude, logic, and even attitude, finding people who are determined and motivated to participate in our mission. Above all else, the partnerships we've developed, whether it's been with Apple Academy, with 42, with Qwasar and Kwame, who's on the panel today, it's really about finding talented people who are excited about entering a career in information technology. If you look at traditional education, the universities in the US have produced about 55,000 computer science graduates every year for the last decade. There's slight growth around the world in the number of computer science graduating from traditional universities, but not much. It's particularly small when you compare it to innovations in technology, the number of PCs, phones, IoT devices shipped each year, which are growing exponentially. There's no way for this very small pool of computer science graduates to keep up with the economic demands of our sector. So we're looking for great people. And as it turns out, they exist all over the world, and we need to be a lot more aggressive in pursuing that talent. In many cases, these are students, as you would expect, or at least traditional student age people who are getting their careers started. So we want to reach out to them, educate them about what we're doing in this area of low-code platforms and get them to participate. But we also see a lot of people with some business experience who want to participate more and more in digital transformation. They want to embrace technical skills, they want to learn, and we're able to provide a great learning environment through many of our partnerships that help these people upskill, reskill, and participate in a much more significant way, enhancing their career and helping the business if they get on board with the systems approach that we're teaching. So those are the primary qualities we're looking for in partnerships: finding talent, educating the talent, onboarding them into our industry.
Thank you very much, Brett. So would it be fair to say that the global demand for tech talent, IT talent, would be growing over the next 5-10 years? And we have a lot of tech educators here. So what kind of advice would you give to them? What kind of people they should produce so that they will be hireable by companies like Apple and Claris, but by being here in Kazakhstan?
Sure. I think the demand is going to be will be massive for the next 5 years. I think there's going to be incredible demand with really no practical way to satisfy all of that demand. In terms of skills, I would look for the combination of foundational coding skills. Make sure, when they look for talent, look for smart, driven people. And that's the most important thing. We've all seen with innovations in education, people learn in a variety of different ways. So I wouldn't even look past people who weren't necessarily great test takers in high school or great academics. There are a lot of self-educated learners who participate really well as coders and developers in our industry, and we see that. So look for the smart people, and beyond teaching them C and Python and modern frameworks, I would also encourage some training about business fundamentals. When I look at the volume of small and mid-sized businesses around the world, not to mention the very large corporations, all of them need to go through their own disruption. And in many ways, every company needs to become a software company. There have been some great articles recently about a very large pizza chain, Domino's Pizza, that has moved from a $12 stock to a $300 to $80 stock over the last 10 years. And that's not because they're selling 30 times more pizza. It's because they've disrupted their own model. They've put great e-commerce, mobile packages in place, incredible delivery systems, and built a really strong brand that's driven customer loyalty. So most of their innovations have been technology-based. My point is that teaching students about the business opportunity, what's happening in the workplace, all these industries that need to disrupt themselves, they need young talent. They need people who understand information technology in meaningful ways. So teach them about a P&L, about project management, about return on investment, so they can immediately have impact and get on board making a really competitive living.
Thank you very much, Brad. Let me pass it to my colleague, Elmira. Elmira?
Thank you, Yernur. And actually, thank you, Brad, to adding into our discussion the definition like a digital education and IT talents. I would like to continue with this with our next speaker, Kwame Yernur. Generally speaking, Kwame, I would like to ask you first, is it the primary role of the digital education is just about the learning, or it should be about the developing more? And why the education should be aligned with outside world?
So this is so first, thanks for inviting me to the EdTech Forum. I'm very happy to be connected with you and say hello to the other panelists. Really, thank you. This is a great question. So there is like. So if I want to develop like shortly, I would like to say like in the history of education, traditional education is something that has been a lot of been taken in consideration by government. And government, when education has been created, they didn't have like very a lot of clue to feel the economy because like government like 100 years ago, especially when we start the massification of education, there was not a big focus amongst the economy on those days. The power of a state was because of your militaries, this kind of thing. So usually like best school was like military school, for example. And this has started to switch, especially in the US where they start to create like business schools. And so we start to have like a connection between government and the economy who start to be stronger and stronger. And today, like a government is like, I would like to say almost like just a question about like economy. They are asking a lot of questions about economy. And roughly the question behind is to know if the university system has been, I'm just talking about higher education, is the higher education has been able to follow what has been asked by those governments? And roughly the answer is more or less no. Except for business schools that are really connected to what they are doing. But on the other part, you always have like that, I would like to say almost fight between, that has been created, saying like on one side, you have like long-term knowledge that we're going to give you through the school, and maybe like any master degrees teachers a lot of them is going to explain to you that the most important is like for their student to get access to the research. And we know that the research is a very small portion of the people who's going to get access through universities to something. But if you take like 100 years ago, like most of the people, they didn't go to university. So finally universities was just providing like PhDs, and that's okay. And today the role is completely different because basic job in the world has completely changed, drastic change. Like a basic job 100 years ago was maybe you was like Cutler and you were working with your parents to learn that. Maybe in 2050 to be like the basic job is has to have like some understanding of what is AI. And roughly you will not learn AI through your parents. So you have to go to schools to learn that. But on the other side, like university systems, they said to you, our job is not really to provide like million of talented people to fulfill the economy. So so there is like no many solution. Governments, they will need to have like schools that are really connected in terms of technical skills to the economy, and they will pass through the university if the university system are able to change the way they are doing for that, or if they are not, they're going to simply create parallel schools to the university system that are able to fulfill that economy. So yes, for people, like most of the people, like 95% or 99% of the people, when they go to university, what they're looking at the end of the university to get a job, that's it, okay? So the question is like, do you have to answer to that demand correctly? And or are you just connected to say like, no, we just want researcher and we're gonna provide it to 1% of the people around the world. So that's a bit the question that is behind. On our side, what we think is like, it's not because you prepare people to get job tomorrow that you cannot give them a long-term education. So we know how to do both of them.
By the way, I like your T-shirt. You're like a superhero.
Yeah.
It's nice outfit. Actually, Kwame, I like questioning the people. What's next? So, besides, what will happen with the students after their normal university 4 years? Or in other words, I would ask you differently. Is it a deep learning or active learning is the key to actually to change the education and bring it to the new era?
So it's another very tough question you're asking. Today there is like the question is a lot about the massification of education. So it means like if you have an education that prepare your students to become like PhD, very strong mathematician, and the market is not asking for that, okay, you will have issues. Okay, there is like a lot of statistics about that, and it's basically impossible to fulfill all the demand. So the question behind active learning, deep learning, etc., is finally to find a way to help to the massification of the higher education. If you take like very Western Europe countries, for example, 80% of the population get access to a high school degree, okay? But afterwards, like less than 25% has diploma from university level. And roughly, you know, like it's almost impossible to get a job just after the high school. So what's happened to those 75% of the population? And it's where things start to be like very difficult to handle. So when we are talking, for example, on our side about active learning, so my specialization is about active learning, I would like to say, and how to apply active learning to higher education in the field of digital and digital only. So I don't know the other fields. It's the question behind is how we are able to create like a big massification to give access to a lot of students to an education quickly. So how you create a school from scratch like you did, okay? So we had like first discussion to open the school in April in the middle of the crisis of the COVID-19, okay? And you are able like maybe tomorrow to reach like about like 1,000 students. So in 4 years, in a couple of months, how you get like 1,000 students that's gonna be educated about digital. So that's really the question. So behind that, like we know that there is as Brad said, there is a huge demand for get access to a coding job and this kind of things, okay? So the students gonna get access to those jobs. Then if you're asking me what's gonna happen in 2050 in terms of job creation and what kind of job, I have no idea, okay? Strictly no idea. So just to give you statistics, okay, today in Western Europe countries, like 70 or 75% of the jobs in 2020 are not the jobs that was existed in 2000. So in 20 years, okay, 70% of the job of the market have completely changed. So I'm not able to tell you what's going to happen like for the next 30 years. I have no idea. But what I know is like if you give a good education to your students, as we try to do, and we think we are giving through the active learning methodology, our students who has been taught in 2000, they are still in the industry right now. So it means like we have been able, using those technology, to give like long-term job to the students. So I think continuing this way, we are modeling the mind of the students with a certain mindset, and we are kind of sure that they can continue to get access to different jobs.
Okay, let me ask you the last question, very short. I know that you will know the answer for this question because you are more than 20 years in the industry of preparing the IT specialists.
The good answer is 42, you know?
Yeah, so knowing that the IT specialists and programmers, they are not just typically employers, but why all the companies around the world are seeking the opportunities to hunt them, why they're like battling for IT talents. What's happening?
So what's happening is simply the digitalization of the world, okay? And when you know how to code, would like to say like digital ready. So the digital doesn't mean like it's 100% code related, okay? But when you know how to code, finally you have a mindset that enable you to have a deep understanding of what's happening in the digital economy, okay? So there is a huge ask for this kind of job. Today, they are considered like superstar, and everybody knows like about, and Bragg is here and is working in the subsidiary of Apple, so he knows like how like developer can be like considered like superstars and whatsoever. But this will not continue, okay? That was like today. What I think like as a near future is like, I would like to say like coder is going to be a basic job in the world, okay? So it's going to be like very normal jobs. I would like to say like maybe we're going to replace the huge factories that we used to have early of the 19th century with huge factories of developers, okay? And it's what's going to maybe is going to happen. It's not a problem at all. Huh? It's just what I say is like you should not consider like today that what you're going to do as a developer is going to be like a superstar of the 2000, 2005, 2010, 2015. Everything's going to start to change, okay? Especially because this is really dragged by what's happening in the Silicon Valley. And the Silicon Valley as like, today there is like two big issues. The first one is like the COVID-19 crisis. You had to switch like drastically from physical model to the online model. So of course, the offshoring capabilities is going to be much bigger for this industry. And secondly, the US have decided to have like a president, and roughly it's a tendencies all around the world, and it's not just about the US, but it's the same thing in Europe. For example, try as an African to have a visa to get access to Europe. You're going to see it's almost impossible, but roughly like all the borders are closing, okay? So they don't have like a lot of choice. The capacity of a local education system to provide this human resource, these coders to the Silicon Valley or to any industry in the world is going to be, they're gonna come to your place to grab those guys if their local market is not able to provide it. And roughly, for many reasons, I would like to say like the university system in the US is not very agile. And I'm not sure they're going to be able to provide this kind of things to the local market even that they have. So tomorrow things is going to happen like outside the borders. So any economy who is ready to act to any education system that's going to be able to provide all those talents is going to be like one of the big winners.
Okay, it was a breaking news from the West Coast USA, Yernur.
Yes. Thank you very much, Elmira. Thank you very much, Kwame. And now let us take these global insights and put it into a local perspective. And I'd like to invite our next speaker, whom I now call serial edupreneur. He was the rector of SDU, Suleiman Demirel University. Then he was the rector of I2, Asnai IT University. And now he is the rector of Open University in Astana. So good evening, Kanat. Very happy to have you here. And before I jump into the questions that I was going to ask you, a lot of viewers might be very curious on what are you doing right now? What are you up to right now? Tell us a little bit more about your project, please.
The Open University, which we are making now, is focused on the problem which we've discussed before. This is audience 2260. We understand that there's a huge market of underestimated education, in particular requalification, retraining of specialists and people who received some basic education, but they are losing their jobs now. And the universities should be focused on this market. In the whole world, the universities work with the audience from 18 to 22, but a huge amount of talents stay away of this system, and these people should move to new up-to-date knowledge and new training, in particular IT. If we touch upon our today's agenda, Open University, this is the initiative which make affordable high-quality education, and in the second place, it is focused on the audience 22 to 60. This is a big market in Kazakhstan and in the world, and this has a huge social impact and huge economic impact, because sometimes we can see people who have good skills in some industry with smart diving, and if they get some new IT skills, they've become more competitive than juniors who've just graduated from the university.
And we're very happy to welcome you to our club of lifelong learning educators. And let us just get back to this age group, 18 to 22. And you have extensive experience dealing with students. So what do these students dream about? Where do they want to work? Do they want to join large corporations? Do they want to join government? Or do you think they would want to have build their own startups? In Kazakhstan, the students from 18 to 22, and how it is different from the age group that you mentioned just now, the age group from 22 to 60?
It's a very interesting question, by the way. It depends what language they get education on. If we speak about English-speaking institutions, these are people who are willing to work in major international corporations, Big Four corporations. Those who get education in other languages, they are more focused on making a career in Kazakhstan, to stay in the country, to build their own business there. But in general, the Generation Z is different from all others, and they like their independence, and so startups and any new entrepreneurship is very precious for them, and they are more willing to take the risk of starting up their own career, their own business.
Thank you very much, Kanat. And I have one more question about the gig economy, about the Kazakhstan having an ambition to be this outsourcing center, or the global outsourcing center or outstaffing center, joining the global tech map. How do you evaluate Kazakhstan's chance on becoming apparent in the global tech market? And what do you think we're missing? What kind of factors we're missing in the country? What do you think we need to do to actually become very apparent and visible in the global tech map?
If we speak about universities and the role of universities in this area, I believe that universities should transform strongly, and from the conceptual point of view, as Kwame mentioned already, make a huge focus on massivization. Now, our education is affordable, available, but it's not always of a proper quality. We have outdated curriculums, and if we speak about IT, in general, universities are not able to react so quickly on the changes in the labor market, in changes of competencies and technological stacks which are of demand. And so for the role of rectors and managers of universities is very high. They need to experiment, they need to go beyond the borders, and universities should be empathic towards the employers. They need to provide high-quality talents. They need to lead a very close dialogue with the industry. They need to understand very well what is needed and work for the order, for the demand of institutions. As the previous speakers told us, they are dealing with the science, with research. It is of demand, it is really important and critical, but when we speak about the need for the labor market, when IT companies have not enough specialists, they are lacking talents, universities should do several products. First, they need to provide an elite research area, they need to go for it, they need to use talented and skilled students there, and it's also very important to provide high-quality education. We are speaking about the blended education when it's not necessary to come in person to the university. You can sit in a different region, but to get the same high-quality education. I think it's also a very important thing, and universities should clearly understand their role in this area. They have to have very strict and clear KPIs, employment for their students, and up-to-date results of their education, and they need to experiment a lot. They need to experiment with their working approach. They need to experiment with allocation of industry specialists and experts. Not necessarily they need to keep their students 4 years in classrooms. Maybe they will spend 1 year very intensively in IT training and then send off people for practicing in company. Then the person would understand what is interesting, then come back to the university and get the in-depth learning and in-depth specialization on the topic. Changes should refer all things, methodologies, approaches. When we speak about digital transformation, we, from the conceptual point of view, need to understand that we need to change the mindset in the whole block, and the universities should clearly understand what discipline gives what value, and this value should be measured in skills, or should it be measured in the mindset changes, and professors should also set their KPIs. If he comes to me, he knows it. If he leaves my classroom, he should show more skills and more knowledge. Most probably we speak about Kazakhstani education. Professors in Kazakhstan are not focused and do not feel strongly about these topics, unfortunately. And so, as a result, if no one thinks about it, we receive a situation of collective lack of responsibility. It's a great challenge, I believe, if we speak about the role of the university, which needs to be in the war for or fight for talents, both for local and global market. This should be the change which we need to enable and provide for in the university, which we would call both mental and digital transformation.
Thank you very much, Kanat. And I have this just the last question, very short one. So there is a myth that every IT student in Kazakhstan want to study very hard and go and join the Silicon Valley tech company. How much do you think students actually want this? Is it like actually a dream, or is it actually a plan, or there are some students who'd like to stay here? And how much can you see in the upcoming next 5 years that students are actually working for Apple, working for Google, working for large tech companies, but actually by sitting here? How much do you think it's possible?
Очень актуальный вопрос. Я думаю, практически все IT
That's a very relevant question. I think all software designers are dreaming about having a job in Google Software, Apple, or Amazon, or some regional players. I can guarantee it 100%. Every IT person dreams about getting employed by these companies. But there are also people who would like to stay in Shymkent but still be employed by these majors. So they want to stay with their families but get paid in US dollars. So I think that very few people would actually want to physically move abroad. A bigger majority are looking for better employment conditions here in Kazakhstan because they have their families and their relatives here, and they choose a career in Kazakhstan. From the social perspective, that's still very important for them. They have their friends here, their communities. So, and we have to help both groups. We have to help them both to achieve their dreams.
Elmira, passing back to you.
Thank you. Спасибо, Канат, за очень яркие примеры, развернутый ответ.
Kanat, thank you very much for elaborate answers on our questions.
In education and COVID lesson learned. But we are like in front of the big dilemma of our age, human or machine. I would like to address my next question to Arnold Doray, CEO of Terra AI. Arnold, what do you think about this? Deep human or machine learning? Who will win the long-term perspective battle? And what lessons learned should we take into consideration speaking about the digital transformation?
Well, thank you, Elmira, for inviting me to this conference. It's an interesting question. I think a lot of people are scared about deep learning and AI, will it take away our jobs and so on. And I think it's just like any other technology in some ways. Technology takes away jobs and it also creates new jobs as well. And I think the important thing is for people to adapt. What we're trying to do with Terra AI is to try and open up opportunities to those who are perhaps non-programmers and perhaps are not in the traditional IT scene. I feel personally that AI will impact in a positive way, and mainly because it will enhance existing jobs. It will make existing jobs, it's more like an enhancer. I mean, like maybe 50 or 60 years ago, and before we had computers, before computers were commonplace in the workplace, people thought, well, it's going to replace, you know, a clerk or let's say a secretary and so on, right? And actually, a lot of those jobs weren't replaced. Some things were replaced, obviously, right? But largely, a lot of the jobs will be enhanced or changed or modified because ultimately people still need to do something. They will need to work, and they will adapt. People do adapt quite easily, actually. And technology, whenever there is a need, for example, perhaps to upgrade someone and so on, there would always be technology providers, people like, you know, Kanat in its Open University and Kwame and so on, who will provide the tools that people need to actually change. So I think it's a mix of both. Deep learning and AI will obviously destroy some jobs, but I think in the long run, I think everyone will win out, I hope.
Thank you for giving us a hope, and actually continue the theme. I would like to say and put into discussion that this transition is already happening. Like, for example, a lot of educational programs now leading by the technological companies, like, for example, Alizila in China, or Yandex in Russia, or Google, Microsoft, etc. Why do you think is it happening?
That's a good question. I think it's because there is, as Brad says, there will be an explosion in IT-related work because a lot of the stuff we're doing, the whole world requires IT, and there's certainly a shortage of IT talent. And there's not enough to go around. And as we have new countries, I mean, coming up like Singapore and around the world like Asia and so on, who are, you know, developing themselves, they will require their own IT talent. And we're seeing that in Asia, in Southeast Asia, at least where I'm from. I've just come from Indonesia last year, and what we see is that there's a hunger for IT talent, right? In large Asian countries, the problem is not so much that there isn't talent, but in locating them. So for any one job, for example, you might get, you know, tens of thousands of applicants. You know, how do you sift among so many? So that's the kind of challenge that these companies are facing. But I see also that what Kanat said, you know, that a lot of universities don't really, it's quite hard to adapt to new technologies. So they might lag behind the cutting edge, let's say, maybe a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or even 5 years, depending on the university itself and what it does. So I think there will always be, of course, but I do also see universities reinventing themselves, changing themselves. Especially in Southeast Asia, where I'm from, in Singapore, certainly, universities are rapidly adapting to these external needs. But I think technology is advancing so fast that it's very hard for these, for the traditional, you know, curriculum, for curriculum to develop and take root. It takes years sometimes, because it's not just about the curriculum itself. It's about, you know, how do you hire these talented lecturers and so on. Plus, there's also, I feel a lot of universities have got, they might not be so concerned about employment, to be honest, right? So universities are primarily about getting students, and really it's for many years, for decades perhaps, right? It's understood that you have a degree, it's like a key that you use to unlock something else, which is a job. But that might not be the case. I think now, because there are so many university degree holders around the world, and I mean, competing for jobs locally even, right, that a degree alone is not enough. You need to unlock it with something else. And that's where these students go out and seek, you know, additional knowledge or certification and so on.
Thank you, Arnold. And the little notification, we actually announced the program, the Datathon from Singapore, program for beginning AI programmers in Kazakhstan, and hope the numbers will inspire us even more. Actually, I would just want to go out of the box and ask a question from my co-moderator, Yernur. I know that you have also your opinion about why technological companies are involved a lot in educational system.
Yes, thank you very much, Elmira. And I would like to ask Arnold about the... So we have this debate in Kazakhstan, what type of technologies, there's a lot of technologies that are emerging in Kazakhstan, globally, but different experts have been telling us that we should focus on particular technologies that should become our edge, that we should develop expertise, that we should maybe focus on the developing and also focusing more on certain technologies. What do you think could be over the next 5 years? I'm talking about 5 years. What do you think would be these key technologies that could be that we could focus on and become globally competitive, I would say?
Okay, I don't know enough about Kazakhstan. I mean, I've been to your country many years ago. I was thinking of Elmira, I think about 20 years ago. So it was a completely different country then. I'm sure it's completely transformed now, right? And I think all of Central Asia is really transforming in a very wonderful way. And I'd like to go back again and see your country as well and see how it's changed.
After
right?
COVID.
After COVID, yes. But it's a good question. What do you focus on? There's no easy answer to that one. We know, for example, there are certain things that are in the future and they will perhaps play a huge part in the future. And that is, of course, IT. And that's because it's always needed and the world's becoming increasingly digital. The second thing, of course, is things like deep learning and AI. But I think maybe not in ways we normally would think of deep learning as being applied. Most of the time, people think of deep learning as, it's either image processing or maybe reinforcement learning. We teach actually prediction, and we teach about NLP and creating chatbots and so on. And I think that that's important as well. So deep learning, I think, and AI, these skills are important as well. I think, so these are the two things that I see are in the, perhaps, you can forecast immediately, right? But we can't easily forecast what's going to happen in 10 years' time or in 20 years' time, or even 30 years' time. It's impossible. It's just a fantasy. What we can just do is really extrapolate the trends that are occurring right now and perhaps into the future. What's more important, I feel, for any country is not so much to focus on specific technologies or skills and so on, because these, how to do really where it's going. What's more important for any country to focus on is in core things that students perhaps lack. Like, I think one of you mentioned that kids who come out, the millennials, 18 to 20, for example, right? They want to, a lot of them want to get a job in a big tech firm like Google or Apple and so on. What I see in Southeast Asia is that that's mixed. I think that kind of aspiration really happens in a mature country, a mature economy, sorry, like Singapore. But perhaps less so in other places like Vietnam or Indonesia, where more people actually aspire to start their own company, they start their own unicorn and so on. So in Indonesia, for example, there are quite a few companies which are, it's a big enough market so that you can have a local company which is very big, and people aspire to either join one of these companies or perhaps even start their own. So I feel that maybe an important skill would be entrepreneurship. How do you start a company? How do you run a company? Internships at startups, for example, to see how they are run. I think it's also important to foster global alliances with other companies, with countries across the world to see can you get students to go overseas and learn something and then bring them back into Kazakhstan as well, right? I personally don't like the idea of any country being, the outsourced capital of anywhere else, right? I'm more in favor of a country developing its own talents and its own people, perhaps to create something new, right? It's not impossible for a country to actually bootstrap its own economy, to bootstrap its own, startup scene, to its own innovation scene, for example. It's possible. I think it starts off with giving young people access to a global market. So that's, I think, the problem that we face in Asia, right? How do how do younger people actually access, let's say I have an IT skill. Let's say I have a degree in IT, I'm brilliant, but like Kanat said, I want to stay in Kazakhstan, I want to stay in, Indonesia or Vietnam or wherever, right? I don't want to migrate, right? So what then? Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's where we need to have, access overseas as well.
Thank you. We're a bit running out of time. Speaking of the talent, thank you, Arnold. I would like to come back to the topic about building an ecosystem of IT industry to become a potentially Central Asian regional hub who will be raising the human capital in IT and potentially create like outsourcing or staffing center. And I would like to address this question to our next speaker, Dagar Davletov. Dagar, could you please comment?
To comment on what? Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Yeah, IT industry is shifting toward the IT talents and having a high potential capacity in Central Asia region in terms of human capital. Can we build our sourcing center here based in Kazakhstan? And how will it help to creating the our IT talents here and now?
Okay, thanks for the question. I think that IT industry has always been based on talents, first of all. And we see that the rapid development of the industry created local outsourcing industries throughout the world, like Eastern Europe, in Asia, and so on. And our region has tremendous potential. We are certainly good enough to export our intellectual potential abroad. Products or talents, I think it doesn't matter. We have great results in international Olympiads. We have Bolshak alumni. We have a lot of people working in FANG companies, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and so on. So the demand is huge. The global demand is huge, and our local currency is getting cheaper. So it's a good opportunity to earn in US dollars, in euros, and spend here in tenge. And since our local market is really, really small, outsource is probably a way to go for us, not only for EdTech companies, but for the whole industry. Look at Belarus, Ukraine, they're doing great in terms of that. So we need to start exporting. The dependence on the oil is not good for us. And the only way to build expertise on the global market is to start working with it, to start exporting. And I really strongly believe in this, that we can become not maybe the hub like India or Eastern Europe, but we can make our way.
Thank you very much, Dagar. Elmira, if I may ask a question to Dagar. Dagar, we know that you have a very interesting school, Alem coding school, and you have no teachers. It's somewhat similar to models that to the School of 42 and other schools of that sort. And you've mentioned about the high capacity in Kazakhstan in terms of Olympic students, mathematicians, technical people that you're trying to convert to coders and programmers. So the question would be the following. So how can the tech guys in Kazakhstan study on their own? Do they need the guidance? Do they need teachers, or your program is showing its effectiveness? And also, how do you keep their motivation? What do you tell students to work hard and to achieve? How do you motivate them? What do you tell your students to work hard?
Okay, thanks for the question. I think that talented students needs to be like crowdsourced. We need to find them first. We need to source them, and then we need to enable them. So our school is not about teaching them and motivating them by saying some inspirational words and quotes. It's about enabling them. It's about building community. And I think that School 42 has done a great job showing us how to do that in Paris, in California, in other countries as well. This model is being adopted. So not everybody is okay with this model. Somebody needs guidance, right? But I think our school and schools like this are more for like people eager to learn fast, to go to the market, to get a job, to create startup. So it's not for everybody, but it's for already motivated people. And we're just enabling them to do what they are eager to do.
Thank you very much, Dagar. Elmira, if we have time, I would like to ask 3 questions with the short answers, each speaker, if I may.
This is a great idea. Let's do it.
Let's start with Brad. Brad, are you still with us?
Yes, hi. Very much so.
Hi, we missed you. So imagine that you can give 3 advice in total, and 1 advice to government officials, 1 advice to business industry, and 1 advice to students who are attending the universities. So you have in total 3 advice. What advice or initiative or kind of, so what do all these 3 segments should do so that the company like Apple or Google or some Amazon or some kind of a big tech company would decide to locate their office, part of their international office to Kazakhstan?
Yeah, I think for the governments, it's fairly easy. They need to be highly competitive, educating information technology to young students, and they need to set the metric based on what the most competitive country, what education the most competitive countries are producing. That's what they have to do. I think for the businesses, most are not participating in digital transformation right now. Many, businesses have been around for a long time. They've grown and evolved through their own legacy, and that has to change. They need to get started. The good news is it's achievable for all of them to change, at relatively modest budgets. They don't have to hire PhD computer scientists in order to make digital transformation happen for a 40-person manufacturer. They can get that started with 1 employee and 1 partner. And then for the students, in addition to the education, I loved Arnold's line about students thinking locally. I think, ultimately coding skills are a tool for the students. If they can apply that tool to an understanding of the emotion their local economy needs, or their customer, even if their customer isn't local, if they can understand that emotion set and design and develop solutions to meet to solve for those requirements, they're going to be incredibly successful. So I would encourage the students to think beyond coding, do the coding really well, but also think about collaboration, the people they're in contact with, the community, the human interactions, because that's what's going to differentiate product.
Thank you very much, Brad. The same question to Kwame, but the question is, what advice you would give to government, business, and the students to increase number of top-line software engineers in Kazakhstan by 10 times? What kind of advice would you give?
So I think in Kazakhstan, very short. So in Kazakhstan, I think you have almost everything is done for that. You have a stronger STEM education, basically to the high school level. So the question today, I think, is going to be for the higher education. I would like to say you go on the good path. For the government, it's on the good path, and you have to listen to Brad. I think it's most relevant than me to explain to you how to bring them there. For the students, I would like to say it's really a question of motivation, and it's a very low code is very difficult to learn, and you have to keep a lot of motivation, and you have to keep working. And for universities, as I said, I think one of the key, and Kanat said the same thing. You have to think about how to give a very good education in a short time for the students to be able to find a job straightforward after the university, and not just think about I would like to say be more focused on PhD level.
Thank you very much, Kwame. Kanat, next question to you. What 3 advice you would give to actually undertake digital transformation of universities, which we know is very hard, but where should we start?
Change the mental transformation, then the transformation to business values, and transformation of students that the diploma is not the aim. The aim is the knowledge and skills.
Thank you very much.
For the government, give the autonomy to do all these experiments.
Thank you very much. Elmira, do you have any questions to Arnold, or can I ask?
Yeah,
Arnold,
of course, go on.
3 advices you would give to build a great innovation ecosystem here? To the government, to the business, and to the students, to the community, let's say.
Well, simple. I think for government is to encourage small businesses, to encourage local innovation, to encourage entrepreneurship. And that's not so hard to do because there's tons of patterns like that all around the world that you can copy and paste from, right? For businesses, don't always look to the big players to solve your problems. Consider startups, right? Consider startups, consider local companies. To students, I think that there's tons, from what I hear, there's tons of talented people in Kazakhstan. I think, but I'm not too sure about the business scene, the startup scene, and so on. Maybe, consider working in a startup. Consider working in a smaller company where you can learn something about the business and how things run, right? So, yeah, so that's what I'd say.
Thank you very much, Arnold. And Dagar, the last question is for you. Last but not least, so we have a lot of initiatives, Quant, Alem, now OpenU, a lot of initiatives. Dagar, what do you think advice you would give to scale all of these initiatives to the government, to the business, and the student communities?
To the government, I'd say that stop overhelping higher education because private industry, the education industry, competing not only amongst themselves but with the government, since government pouring money into universities, huge money, and I don't think that's a good thing to do. So it's not about helping us; it's kind of not overspending on the things that do not work. To the business is to start exporting. I think that since we historically had a huge amount of money coming from oil and kind of we became oil dependent, and that mentality needs to change. And so probably the simplest thing that we can do is try to start exporting our not only kind of raw materials, but our human potential
materials.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to summarize our session. It was great. Today we did a real digital bridge from the west coast of United States until the Southeast Asia, and in the middle it was Kazakhstan. It was really great pleasure to be with you, our dear guests and experts. And while our theme of the educational forum sounds like global to local and local to global, I guess we are combining international experience with the local wisdom, and we did it well. How to match our future expectation for million jobs within the gig economy with our local solutions of nowadays? I guess there is no right or wrong answers because we're all belonging to the singularity. With the multiple choices we're doing here and now. Thank you for being with us. Follow us. Stay tuned.
Thank you for being with us at the EdTech Forum 2020. As my colleague Elmira mentioned, we're building bridges, and we're going to build some more bridges tomorrow. So stay tuned and join our program. Thank you very much for spending the evening with us.
Bye. Thank you.